Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Smith and would like to welcome you to the Nurse Deck interview series. Today, we are interviewing Charlene Harrod-Owuamana. Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
Great. So tell us, Charlene, how did you get started in nursing? What led you into writing and hosting?
Okay, so what got me so excited into nursing was when I was a little girl. I used to go to this clinic, and I used to see this lady at the clinic who would always call me in the back of the clinic. And I was just so excited and fascinated with her. She was the only African American nurse that was at the clinic at that time back in the 80s. So that's what inspired me to become a nurse, because she would always explain to me everything that she was doing, and I knew I had that trust. She was like a real trusted person that was at that clinic that I could say anything to. She would explain things to me, and I was just so fascinated in her job.
Interesting. So when you were young, you said you went to a clinic, you met a nurse who turned out, you said she was African American, and she taught you, she put you under her wing. It sounds like she was there for you.
Yeah, she nurtured me. She showed me that, nurses were the best in a clinic. You saw the doctor for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but the nurse really spent time with you, getting your vitals, asking you how you feel. If you told her you didn't feel well, she asked you what was wrong. She just had that nurturing, caring feeling.
Got it. So she ultimately inspired you to be a nurse.
Yes.
That's really cool. So, really interested in knowing this. I wrote a medical book, took me 4.5 years. I see that you have completed 18 books over the past 3 years. Can you tell
Yes.
us? Yeah, so can you tell us more about your books, such as A Silent Epidemic, Nursing and Depression Anthology, and The Magic Nurse, Vaccine versus Shots? What
Yes.
inspired you to write these?
Well, for me, being a nurse who suffered with depression earlier in my career, I decided that how could I best serve the people who serve others? So what I did was I did a little bit of research to find out, are there nurses like me who were going through some type of depression? Um, I was doing home care there for a minute, and my nursing supervisor, she was a very seasoned nurse. And one day, one of my patients passed away that I was doing home care for. And I felt like I wasn't myself that day, but I knew that I had went to visit 4 patients. So I went into the office and I said to my supervisor, "Oh my goodness, I went to see my 4 patients today, and I don't remember what I talked to them about because I was thinking about my patient who passed away." So we had a conversation, and I asked her, "Is there any way that I can come back into the office for 2 weeks until I kind of got myself acclimated, to what was going on in my life at work versus my life at home?" And she brought me back into the office, but she said, "You know what? We're going to bring you back in the office for a month." That showed me that my nurse manager was very worried about her nursing staff and how we deal with death. Even in home care, you have deaths, not to mention that in nursing in a hospital, nurses do deal with death. But when you're in someone's home, you get that family closeness, you get to know the family, you get to know the patients. So you get to know their walk in life. And what came out of that was I needed to share my story so that other managers, other avenues in healthcare can also, um, benefit from that assignment that I had to write that book.
So
Um,
ultimately, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh yeah, so that they could get the feeling of what nurses really look for. And me working in home care, I stayed there for 9 years. So that was a job that I was comfortable in, and not only comfortable in, the nurse manager made it worth my while to stay there because she understood that life things happen.
Sounded like you had a supportive boss and who understood, because I don't hear that a lot from my nurse colleagues. It sounds like you mentioned being depressed. It sounds like there was a touch of burnout too, but is that
Hmm.
right? And
Yes.
yes, and so you ultimately wrote to share your story with others so they can benefit from it. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because that's what nurses do. They teach, they share their stories so that the people who are coming behind us can experience some of that. And maybe that will change a lot of other managers and their outlook on how they represent their nurses.
So there's a difference between a boss and a leader. It sounded like I should call them a boss, but it sounds like they were a leader because they were looking out for you and your best interest. Because if their employees are happy, then you're going to stay at your job longer, which ultimately is better continuity of care for your residents, your patients. So
Absolutely,
I
yes.
respect your leader for doing that, for understanding.
And my other book that's called The Magic Nurse, that book is so dear to me. I am here to tell you that I've been a pediatric nurse for 12 years. I went on an assignment in California that prompted me to write that book. Several kids were coming in on a daily basis to get their vaccine for COVID. And I just sat there and I just observed the kids, and they were fearful because all of the parents were telling the kid they was coming to get a shot. So I'm sitting there thinking of everything under the sun not to say that they were getting a shot. So I came up with the analogy of a vaccine versus a shot.
Oh,
Right. So when you tell kids that they're coming to get a vaccine, one is something that they don't know about. Two, it's a different wording. And three, when I told the kids that they were getting a vaccine and I explained to them and let them do touch and feel. I let them touch the syringe. I let them feel the syringe to know that it wasn't going to hurt. I talked to them about the solution that was in the vaccine and that was in the syringe that wasn't going to hurt as well. So with me letting them do touch, feel, an explanation behind why they were there, and also gave them an opportunity to tell me what they felt about COVID. And I would ask them their favorite colors, their favorite cartoons. It was just like, I tell people when you work with pediatric patients, it is the most rewarding job because where else you get to play all day?
oh.
So, and going to California, it really opened my eyes that not only the kids in California, all the kids all over the world need to know that they're going to get a vaccination. Now, when school come up and they get vaccinations, those are so important for their health, their teachers' health, and all of the other kids that are in school as well. So when I started talking about vaccines, the kids were excited, like, give me more, give me more, give me more information. And over the 200 kids a day that I was giving vaccinations to, they were so excited. So they called me the magic nurse because the
Oh,
vaccine didn't hurt, just as I told them. It wasn't going to hurt, and it didn't. And I got comments like, oh boy, it really didn't hurt. Oh, Mommy, you have to let her give you your vaccines. They really doesn't hurt. So then I had the adults come in to get their vaccines done by me as well. So when I was in California for those 3.5 months, it was so rewarding and exciting. I got to go to Google, Tesla, Facebook, all of those companies that are in San Francisco. I got to go there to vaccinate their employees and tell their employees the importance of being vaccinated. and, just to share some of my East Coast swag so that they'll know that, we all are in this to win this.
That is super cool. You caught my attention. You said the kids went from being scared to wanting to receive the vaccine to telling their parents about it, saying, Mom, it's really not that bad. Their parents getting vaccinated. It sounds like you were able to educate them on why the vaccine's important, but also, like you said, by touching, feeling, educating them, and what a difference and impact that made. Who knows? You might end up having them be a nurse when they grow up because it sounds like you have inspired them.
Yes, and the most important part of being a pediatric nurse is several kids with different illnesses were coming to get their vaccines. And for me being a pediatric nurse, I see all kids as a kid. So this one kid, he laid in the floor and he kept screaming and screaming, and I kept hearing him behind me, but I was working at my station, conversating with the kids. And I just happened to turn back and see him laying in the floor. So I goes back there. I stopped my station for a minute. I went back there. I said, now, I can't even get around you. Why are you in the floor? He said, because I come here to get a shot and I don't want to. I said, well, guess what? We're going to go outside and take a walk, and we're just going to have a conversation. So I sat outside on a bench with him, and I asked him again, why are you here? He said, my mom said I have to get a shot. I said, well, let me tell you something. At my station, I don't have any shots. He said, for real? All of those other nurses have shots. I said, well, at my station, I have a vaccine. And on top of that, I need a helper. Are you willing to help me and come to my station? He said, sure. He said, well, is it going to hurt? I said, well, it's going to hurt a little bit and then it's going to be gone. Just that quick. As quick as it happened, it's going to be gone. I said, do you trust me? He said, yes. So for some unknown reason, I think the touch with kids work. So I held both of my hands out and he put his hand on my hand. And I said, okay, we're going to walk back in here. I'm going to give you your vaccine. You're going to be my helper. And it's going to be all over. And you're not going to feel anything. And then you can call your friends and tell them to come to my station and it'll be all right. So we went in, his mom watched us the whole time. And then he sat at my station. I let him clean his arm with the alcohol wipe. And I told him, this is all the alcohol you'll have until you're 21. And he laughed and he fell out. And then he rubbed it on his arm. I said, is it clean? He said, yeah. I said, no, rub it again. Get it clean, clean, clean. So he was rubbing. I said, okay, it's clean now. I said, okay, so you look over at the TV screen and I'm just going to count from 1 to 10. And on 10, I'm going to give it to you. He said, okay. So I said, 1, 2, and he jumped. I said, what are you jumping for? I ain't do anything. So I said, I'm going to have to start over, all over again. And then I said, 1, 2, and I gave it to him at 3. And then I took the needle and stuck it behind my back. And then I kept counting 4, 5. He said, no way. I said, what? He said, you gave it to me and it didn't even hurt. I said, yes way. It didn't even hurt. So after I gave him his vaccine, his mom came over and she was crying. And I couldn't figure out why. She said, my son has autism and he doesn't like people to touch him. But I told him he needed to get this shot. And how did you get him to come back in here? I said, well, we just had a conversation. And I asked him to trust me, and he said he would. And his mom was so grateful because he was a kid with autism. I didn't know, but I figured I'd do the same thing that I do for every other kid. And it made a world of difference to him and his family. And of course, I had to come back to give him his second shot. So.
Wow, that story and then the others you mentioned ultimately made you want to write a book. And no telling how many kids have received the vaccine now after you took the time to write a book on that. But also, you made mention of how the small things matter. Like you established rapport, you made him the helper. and you changed the wording. It's not a shot, it's a vaccine. So it's those little
Absolutely.
things that ultimately made him take it.
Yes. I've done all kinds of tricks to get kids to get vaccines. One day we was at the center and they had balloons. Balloons are the most favorite things to have at a vaccine site. So what I did was, it was an orange balloon. So I convinced the kid that if they got the vaccine, that the balloon was going to turn green, but it was going to happen really quick. When I gave them the vaccine, that they had to pay close attention to it, because if they didn't, they was going to miss that color change. And several kids went for it and they got their vaccine and they was like, oh, that balloon never turned green. I said, I told you, it turns so quick that you can't even see it with your eyes. And that was like, that's why I say working with kids and me, it is such a wonderful feeling.
I can tell you love it. It shows.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us more about the Nurses Lounge radio show. How did it start? What does it offer to listeners?
So the Nurses Lounge radio show was a platform that I came up with because I always hear things about lounges and where people can go. They have cigar lounges, they have Slurpee lounges, they have all kinds of lounges. And I was like, what about a nurse lounge? We always go into the nurse lounge and give report. So why not bring that scale on a larger scale where nurses can come on the nurses lounge and talk about a little bit about what happens in the nurses lounge, where we talk about patients, we talk about illnesses. So now we can get this word out to the community by talking in the nursing lounge and making them feel like they're part of us in our lounge, where we give report and we get educated.
Really cool. So can they go there too, just to voice and talk to other nurses? Is it like a way of just letting it out there with people who understand what they're going through?
Right. So it's a platform where I bring on experts and sometimes I bring on patients to describe what they're feeling, so that when someone listens to the radio show, they'll know that they're not the only ones experiencing this type of illness, or this type of taking this type of medication and what it does to the body, whether the medication makes the hair fall out or make them feel really weak, or that they're on such a small dosage that the doctor started with a small dosage and they increased it as time go on. On the nurses lounge, I also have a kids corner where the
Okay.
kids come on and talk about, since we're after COVID has happened, I have the kids come on and talk about their education and how they view their education since COVID. Was it a good thing to do online schooling, or are you better at school doing your work? And I have had a lot of kids volunteer to come on and talk about their day since they went back to school. It's so important to let kids have a voice too. So
Agreed.
that's why I started the Nurses Lounge Kids Corner.
That is really neat. So it's not just about nurses per se, but you bring on patients, and you also have a kids corner where you specifically ask them about how they view education, like the online learning versus being in the class.
Exactly. Yes. We talk
Really cool.
about different things, such as one little girl wanted to talk about her grandmother having diabetes and how she helps her. So that was an interesting show we did. We also did a show on bullying, to talk to the kids about being bullied or bullying someone else. So it's generally a platform for the kids that talk about what they have on their mind that day. And we do the show in a positive way.
Bullying is real. I respect that you bring that topic up. I don't think it's brought up enough. So I
Right.
respect you bring that up. So, how do you feel about the current working conditions for nurses, and how do you think we can strengthen the healthcare system today?
I think we can strengthen the healthcare system today by, they do have EAP at certain offices, which is Employee Assistance Program, which help you with depression and things like that to supposedly support you so that you don't get burned out. But what I would like to see is I would like to see some senior nurses go into these institutions and maybe have like a 15-minute breakout so that the nurses can come and talk about their patients who have passed on or their patients who weren't doing so well and had to be transferred to one of the critical care units so that we can get more upbeat spirit in the hospital and in our nursing lounges. I would prefer that they brighten up our nurses lounges and make them more colorful so that they would be a more pleasing place for us to give report instead of like the solid white walls, and the same old green lockers. Maybe give us some color lockers. Give us some, just give us some self-care, in other words. Ask us what we would love to see. Give us a massage chair in there. Maybe we can pop in and do a massage, on one of our breaks, go in the break room, give yourself a massage, and then go back out and still be able to take care of your patients safely.
You're exactly right. Not only, do patients have to be taken care of, but we are human. We have to be taken care of as well. And you're exactly right. 15 minutes of a breakout session can go so far. I know sometimes for myself, if I've had a patient pass or like you said, go to the critical care unit because they're not doing well, it can just ruin my day. And I'll try to
Hmm.
take care of other patients, but it's like my brain is in a fog. Just talking to
Hmm.
someone can make a difference.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for me, I have several nurse friends. So when I need that break or I need that breakthrough, when I go on lunch, I'll call one of my friends and I'll say, I'm having a rough day at work today. What could I have done better for this patient? And I just describe, not by giving out any names or any pertinent information, but I'll just describe the situation that I was in and I say, well, is there anything I could have done better?
Mhm.
Because that's what we look for. We look for what we could have done better to get a better outcome for our patients. And, going to our colleagues can really help us understand what we could have done better or, just something to make me feel a little better in what I
Right,
did for that situation.
right. So, what is the best message you can tell our nurses experiencing burnout and depression to boost their morale and keep them going?
I hear people say, oh, you're a nurse, you chose this field. I tell people, no, I am a nurse and God chose this as my career. I don't have a field, I don't have a job. This is a career for me. And God placed me here to do exactly what He instilled in me: trust, obedience, and most of all, love and care for those who need care. And stay true to yourself. If something is really bothering you, you should be able to go to your supervisor and let them know how you feel on a personal, professional level. And if you can't get anything done at that level, then you can go right up the steps, and I guarantee you change will happen, because when you feel that way, then they can expect the other nurses to be a domino effect and feel the same way. So if you have any suggestions as to what your institution should start to do, trust me, someone else is feeling the same way you are.
So, speak up.
Hmm.
Hmm. And also, your comment you made earlier about how, God called you, it reminds me of a quote. It goes something along the lines of, it's nursing, it's not just a profession, it's a calling. So that
Yes.
automatically came to my mind when you said that. It's the truth.
It is. It really is. It takes a very fine person. And for me, it's these hands. God gave me these hands, and they are so blessed. And when I have a patient that's not feeling well, I turn my hand over and I just hand it to them. And if they place their hands on my hand, it's almost like I can feel the happiness and the joy that's coming into them. And that's just what inspires me as a nurse. That touch, that human touch. And people nowadays, they put on gloves, they put on this, they put on that. And I say I'm a nurse from the old school where you didn't wear gloves to do any procedure that you were doing. And it's just something about that human touch.
The touch. Yeah, you're exactly right. Because you can always wash your hands afterwards, right?
Exactly. And that is so important. I'm telling you, that human touch is so important. And, it means so much to me, especially I give them the option if they want to hold my hand. I don't say I'm holding your hand. I just hold my hand out. And a normal thing for somebody to do when you hold your hand out is to place their hand on top of yours. So.
Yes.
And some people say nobody never offered me their hand, So I just found that to be my gift to patients.
Mm-hmm. That's really awesome. I cannot wait to read The Magic Nurse, Vaccine versus Shots.
I'm telling you, that book and me are one. And one of the pharmacists in California gave me that name as the Magic Nurse because she saw how I interact with the kids, and the kids that were coming to my station weren't crying. And it all was, me introducing myself to them into my world and letting them know that my world was also their world.
That's so cool. Well, thank you for sharing your story and giving us your positivity. I appreciate that. Yeah.
And I want to thank you guys for interviewing me and letting me be on your platform as well. This has been one of the most wonderful platforms that a nurse can come to feel comfortable during an interview. And you just brought out everything in me that I wanted to share today.
Oh, that means a lot. Absolutely. Thank you for your time. Is there anything else you want to share?
I would just like to say it doesn't take a much to speak up for you and your colleagues, but to bring it to someone's attention to make the life that you want at your job to be pleasant.
But you have to speak up. Sometimes people are fearful to speak up, but
Right.
you have to.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Charlene. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Jamie. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Take care.